we have a lot of need for this country because we vote on some of these exercises when we're trying to form unions and we're trying to get participation. I would not rule out any country. What we probably need is that information to come through and save us from these unnecessary discussions about deciding why did he go to Gabon, why did he go to this other country.
So that information is needed,
even
right?
for that jet.
Yes.
Before we criticize this, and do we know why the main jet was not in use? We don't know. Because the rule also doesn't say, because there's a presidential jet, it then follows that any time the president is not on it, he must delegate the jet. It doesn't follow. It's just lack of information. Now we're throwing all this speculation up in the air. As it is, they're saying it was a cheaper bet than doing it locally. And they've said it was a one-off. So then, what are we going to get upset with? The one-off?
Okay, fine. It says it was a one-off, but here's the thing. The Daily Nation did have that invoice, which suggested it was $300,000 for the first quarter of the year.
But does that say it was going to be continuous?
Well, come on, if it's the first quarter of the year. If we have business and it's a one-off, I'll tell you, for my services, it's 10,000 shillings. If I say for my services, for the first 3 months of the year, it's 10,000, it would be safe to assume that the second 3 months...
Right now, in the absence of structured information, I would rather work with what the official word is. It's a one-off. They've put out the cost. They confirm what the cost is. Tomorrow, if the guy hops onto this thing and goes somewhere else, then we can get up and say, it's not what you said. But right now, it's the word against ours.
Okay, and this is what we're talking about, information. If information is given out there, he's going here and this is exactly what they're going to discuss. But they did say it was, to discuss economic, and trade ties with these countries. Do you think we've come to the point where, okay, we scrutinize everything, and that is a good thing, that we're also watchdogs? And I would say perhaps this came out during the Grand Coalition government, where there was no opposition and everybody then felt free to be the opposition. But do you get the impression, Martin, that sometimes we complain sometimes without the facts, that we bash and we make speculations, we nitpick and we say all of these wild things without information?
That's the nature of our country and our people. We are such an opposition country in terms of we only oppose everything and anything that comes our way. So I think it's a culture that at some point I don't know how we're going to do a reverse motion, so that you will find even people who are in government, they'll also oppose the same government they are in.
That was happening in the Grand Coalition government.
When does it not happen?
So that's the problem. But there's a way, there's need, like we said, for information to filter out so that people can know what is happening. The moment he embarked on that trip, he would have detailed, this is how it's going to be, and this is what is going to happen, and the entire information should have been out. You saw there was even speculation at some point. I think one of the media saying that no, he's on a round tour of ICC to try and absorb, gather support for whatever situation. But
for me, there's a way to beat that. To sort out the communication.
Yes,
it'll beat all this nonsense.
Right. Yes, because there is a vacuum, and like you say, every time there's a vacuum.
We cannot be the country that expects the government to get clearance from citizens before it does anything. We cannot be that kind. How will we get things done?
Because you cannot have consensus with 40 million plus people. Obviously, there'll always be dissenting opinion.
If you ask them to suggest tomorrow, they'll suggest different planes they should have used.
But the point is, it's for both Uhuru and Ruto to put his government in order.
That's the thing.
And be able to know right now, like, I think we only know who in Uhuru, all the aides that Uhuru has, we only know the State House Comptroller. We don't know who his private secretary is. We don't know who, he needs, in the past when we used to hear stuff, appointments are made, it's like it was an all-inclusive kind of an appointment, so that you can understand, you can know who is dealing with what, and you can be able to channel whatever grievances
to the right person.
Speaking of thing isn't working.
Yeah, the piecemeal thing isn't working. That's right. And apparently this week we expect the other two.
Yeah, every week we're expecting something.
Oh, yeah, we're an expectant nation.
Why would we be expecting? They need to form government and move on with business. But this thing of putting people in suspense and stuff like that, like I told you, it's the way they love it. They want to always give you something you can speculate about, so that once the speculation is ripe, then they come in with their own stuff, which is not good for in terms of how we are doing business.
All right. Okay. Speaking of some of these appointments, like you mentioned, some that are not known. Louis, you came across a headline, about ambassadors and envoys.
Oh yeah, there's some diplomats who apparently, there is a complaint now that they were sneaked into certain positions. They have not been vetted, and they are in office, they're working for this country, but now there's a challenge. What happens when, like if we are saying we're waiting for another list, we're waiting to see diplomats being vetted, we're waiting to see people set out to work. That has caused confusion again. So there's people out there not sure if they're going to be recalled. There are those who, in fact, part of the information is there are those who were asked to come back and then somebody called and said stay put. So it is one of the areas that now has gone gray because of this, the lack of speed in fixing that area. It has gone gray now. There is lack of clarity in that area.
Right.
What happens to the diplomats who are there? Who puts them out there, and who are the diplomats who will then continue? So that we start also holding them responsible as government of the day. So some of these things that happen, even some of these visits we're hearing about, we should be able to call somebody who was in that country, who's concerned, and ask them, so our president is coming over, what can you tell us about it? Those are
right
very
now,
mundane things which the media does with international relations. But now, if the president hops off to Washington, who are we going to call?
Kamau Macharia is there. Kamau Macharia.
The author of interesting letters.
Very loyal person to the president.
Again, self-initiative.
Yes. So
now you see everyone.
That's
okay. I won't even say anything on that. I probably have a career I'm a lot younger than you guys. I have a name to hopefully build and maintain. So
it is the way it is.
It is the way it is. There you go. Okay, pun intended. Let's move on to matters of the TJRC. And I remember we've been talking about this and how, you know, the saying that comes to mind is Ngonja. Hey, okay. And I will say it right. Ngoja ngoja huumiza matumbo. We've waited for this for such a long time. You actually, got a chance to find out what's happening within this commission. It was a front page written by you in the Saturday Standard.
Absolutely.
So tell us what's happening in TJRC now that you have some insider information.
It is a very sad situation that I came across because I'm even given to understand that the vice chair has gone underground because she's been receiving threats. That's Tekla Namachanja. And the issue at hand, the bone of contention, is that these commissioners are divided down the line, the local ones and the foreign ones. The foreign ones have stuck, as I'm told, they have stood their ground because there's been these moves to have a section of the report altered, and it is the explosive chapter on land. The issue is that there are certain prominent government officials in this particular government and in the past governments who have been mentioned in that report, and they have been recommended for prosecution. And there's been that push and pull in terms of the local commissioners. Some of them feel that if this goes the way it is going, some of them might not be sitting very pretty with this government, and they will never get any other jobs after these foreigners leave and the report is tabled.
Oh, how honorable.
That is their fear. But the problem is that where this report is hitting most is that it has a self-propelling mechanism in terms of prosecution. Once it is handed to the president immediately, the mechanism starts in terms of the timelines of how that prosecution should be, the period that the president must take action. I mean, the government must take action on those who have been named. So, do you want to take a report that is implicating your own government officials and even maybe to the top ranks in terms of the issues to do with land? You know, matters of land.
When you
what
put it like that, the effect is it's almost as if technically you're being served. And if that then be the train of thought, it means the president ducked being served the other time. That's the translation.
That is exactly what
he ducked being served.
And in the process, they buy time so that you can be able to doctor this report and ensure that those particular aspects.
In your investigation, what is the strength of those who are willing and wishing to stick themselves out that report, it may come out in totality?
Yeah.
They are divided. You have those foreign commissioners. There's some Mzungus who are in there, and then there is now the vice chair.
So she is also pushing for it in its original
because she
form.
Was responsible in terms of when Isaac,
they want the whole deal to come out.
Absolutely. And that is you see, the problem is when government starts doing this kind of ducking up and down, that's when they create all these confusion and speculation, and it brings things very badly.
Okay, definitely they need help. In fact, I would now, if we can move away from counting pigs and finding out who's on what plane to which country, maybe that is where civil society should go and concentrate.
Absolutely.
And help get this report out. That is real. That is work.
Yes, to be fair to them, they did have a press conference 2 weeks ago where they said if the president is either not willing or doesn't have the time or for whatever reason is unavailable to receive this report, then that report should just go straight to the public.
But the problem is it has to be handed to the president, so that now the legal process
can be dismissed as just speculative.
Why would they duck? I mean, the president has all the time. Definitely, he was in charge yesterday, having his good time. Today, I'm sure he has
go to pray, man. Come on.
That's okay. You can pray, but just receiving a report will take 2 minutes, Louis. It will not take a whole day.
No, I'm following a train of thought, and clearly what you're saying is, this guy, you said you're being served, and he doesn't look pretty. So now what we need to do is find out how do we help that this thing can be pushed to get where it needs to go. That's what we need to find out.
What needs to happen now? Because if the vice chair of the TJRC fears for her life, and if she's actually underground now, then in her absence and all of those that are supporting for this document to be released in its original form, it'll be doctored. And things will happen, behind that. What in your view needs to be done to have this report out in public?
Even if they attempt to doctor it, believe me, because the guy who was in charge of that particular chapter is Professor Otieno Tom.
Yes.
He's the former LSK chairman.
Right.
I doubt that he will be a person who can be pushed over. And I want to believe so. So he will be able to tell us whether the report on that chapter is doctored or not.
May I ask a question though? Do you think we're ready for the truth as Kenyans? Because what's going to come out, like you've said, bigwigs in this government, bigwigs in the previous administration, are named in that report in its form as it is before being doctored. Do you think we are ready as Kenyans to take the truth? Will it come to Louis Niwetu, we'll have the Luo Council of Elders. If it's Martin, we will have, other people. Do you think we are ready for the truth? And even if we have this process out, are we ready as Kenyans to embrace it? Because the similar thing that happened in Rwanda, where they had all of this truth coming out and people actually sitting down and saying, okay, you know what? This is it. Brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. We all made a mistake, because reconciliation and healing is such a difficult process. Each and every one of us needs to admit we did something wrong in one way or another. Are we ready for that?
There is never a convenient time to accept truth. We cannot hold back on a report because we're waiting to see how malleable the citizens are.
Yeah, not hold back on it,
no, but
are we ready for the consequences of it once it comes out?
I think the bigger question is, did we agree that that is the way we want to go? Because if that is the way we agree then it must go that way. If we start debating now, if we're going to be strong enough to take it, or if we're going to be cohesive enough to take it afterwards, then we are going back to the beginning where we were not sure why we wanted this process.
Absolutely. So why did we form the commission in the first place?
If we agree that we want to go that way, then we just have to go the whole 9 yards.
And it went around the country, collected views from Kenyans. There was, even at some point, you saw the chair was implicated by people who are very annoyed with him, and he fought off for almost a year, and then he came back. So it's a whole thing. I mean, let it be tabled for us to know what is this problem.
We agreed, we asked for it, so let's go.
Right, and that's a call to Kenyans, by the way, that if somebody within your community is named, who, by the way, you don't know personally or otherwise, and never will until the day you die, but you are the first person that comes up and says, watu wangu. And you see this on Twitter.
That's another reason.
And I do say this without fear of contradiction. If we say something against a particular leader, you will see people whose last names are coming out in defense of. If we say something against his opponent, you will see people whose last names are this coming out against it.
That is exactly what we're saying. We cannot wait for an opportune time, because we cannot change that attitude in one blow.
Right.
It won't stop now. We know these people will come out to defend each other, and we know that will happen. We are still challenged by some of our tribal behaviors, some of our negative ethnicity behaviors, but we cannot now sit and wait and say, wait until that becomes a bit better. So what we are saying is, when we mooted this process, when we agreed to have this process, we knew full well what's going to happen when it comes out. This is not the time to be afraid. We knew full well the Kenyans are not going to be different citizens from the time the process started till when it was to go to this level of now exposure, prosecution. It was not going to be in a different country. It is the same Kenyans we're talking about.
Okay.
So we cannot hold back now and say, you know what, it's going to be a tribal thing. It was always going to be a tribal thing.
Indeed, and
The
that is,
process
I think,
has
the
to be-
issue that they were
what,
going to
what we
address.
attempted to do, we attempted to say we must put a process together that will be stronger than these things that are going to come in its way now.
Okay, and hopefully you'll keep us abreast with this issue, and
Absolutely.
keep on telling us. And you recall
they've
this was
been
something
giving-
I thought was very, and I kept raising it. And
you only once you get full brief of what is happening is when you can always make a decision. So you don't close your mind to anything. That is my policy.
Okay.
So, but the problem has been getting conflicting information.
Yeah.
The AG told our reporters in Geneva.
Yvonne wants you to vindicate her. That
Yes,
she was
that
onto
when I
a
was-
good thing.
thank you.
She was onto a big thing. But I'm telling her, we also did not mislead her. What we told her was, it cannot be that the president doesn't have time.
That's exactly
what we
Yes.
told you.
Yes.
And we're sticking by that.
And we
agreed.
didn't know why he didn't have time.
Yes, but now details are coming to light, as we say within the newsroom.
So we
Yes.
we didn't know whether we're going to have it this week or next, week, because
if at all.
the AG in Geneva told our
Said
reporter
yes.
2 weeks.
Right.
Kimemia told our other reporter here on Thursday this week. So Thursday or Friday, they're not sure.
Okay.
Again,
So-
Information again.
Communication.
So we don't know. So
Next.
Yeah.
we don't know. Maybe
Hopefully in our lifetime.
Breathe, Martin. Breathe.
Right?
it is very,
Hopefully
very,
in our
very
lifetime.
depressing.
Okay, so let's talk about Honorable Aden Duale now.
Oh, my very good friend.
Yes, your very good friend. He's in trouble.
Martin,
in
you
fact,
need to sound like an MP. These MPs, when they stand in
He's
Parliament,
heading there.
when somebody takes a swipe at them and they know that they've been hit hard, they stand up and say something ridiculous as, oh, my very good friend on the
I
other
know.
side doesn't seem
It's
to
the
have read
same-
the Constitution well.
It's the same thing that
So
happens in the
stop
court of
already
law.
with this very good friend
My
of
very
yours.
good friend.
But I still criticize him.
Right
It
now-
does not mean when he does
Listen,
something wrong, I will not spare him.
This gentleman, who's well exposed, who's well educated, who's in his own private right has done a lot for himself, I think he needs to sit back and understand what that position says. That position, leader of the majority, is not for you to go and take swipes at each other in Parliament. It is a position that educates, that inspires from a cognizant level of a Kenyan. These are the people they look up to. When we sit here and we go down history lane, what do? We have quotes from when Kibaki was official leader of opposition.
Right.
We have quotes from the late Anyona. We have quotes from when Orengo used to be what he's not now. We use all those things, right? So he needs to understand he is in a place of making history. And we're not impressed that he then takes his position to take swipes at that's boring, okay? They did that during the rallies. It's now boring. We need to see leadership.
And particularly because he's representing the president in the National
Not even
Assembly.
that. It is now it's a Kenyan thing.
It's
Yes,
a Kenyan thing, yes.
Technically, you will represent your president, but you were leading Kenyans. He is there.
But he said, okay,
he is
I'll tell
there
you what,
on
though,
a
Martin.
Kenyan ticket. So every
Agreed.
Kenyan is actually very conscious of what he is saying.
Okay.
So he cannot belittle that office by thinking it's about who won today.
Settling
Oh, I really
scores.
put that guy down today. What
Yeah.
about next week? I'm ready for you. Bring it on.
Martin, what do you think? I think the thing, of course, that angered a lot of Kenyans
Tell us about your
was
very
when
good
he
friend.
said, yes, look in the mirror and, if we're greedy, so are you. That angered Kenyans. But, tell us what you
I'm
think
on
about your very
record
good friend.
about that particular
Yes.
statement he made, and I said it here. That was not good behavior in terms of what he said. You wouldn't come to the National Assembly and start calling the people who have employed you. You start calling them names. That one, I am on record here last time when we spoke, and that statement, I castigated it. But now I needed to understand which is the new version that he has brought up so that I can deal with it.
But here's the thing for
He's
me.
causing disquiet, even within his own ranks.
Right.
There are those amongst his own ranks who are unhappy. They find him to be too abrasive. But let me tell you, I watch him. I don't need to go and speak to a member of parliament behind the curtains. I don't need to find a confidential report on him. I'm speaking as a Kenyan who is aware of what his role should be, and he's not inspiring me. He's becoming an irritant to me because he's just there and it's a batting game. They're taking swipes at each other. I'm expecting more from him.
Let me put it this way. Maybe it's an issue of tact. and how to put things in a way that.
How about you just say
something.
lack of?
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's say it as it is.
I can lend you some of these words.
Lack of tact. But
Yes.
can I just say, and perhaps I may be castigated for all of this, but it's the way he said it that was the problem. Was there truth to what he said?
No.
No.
Do you want to go first?
No.
I have my own take on that.
Yes, was there truth? And I'll tell you why. We have we said no one from the 10th Parliament. We said we wanted new blood. Okay, yeah, we still have, some people who are in the 10th Parliament, in the 11th Parliament. And we said when we have new faces and new people who've not been there, that they will introduce a new type of discourse and we'll be moving forward in a different direction. Yet, many of those first-timers in there are the ones who are making the most noise about salaries. Look at the county assembly reps who are on a go-slow.
That was it was a hope, not a promise. Who promised us that? Who are we going to hold accountable for that? That was a hope we had as Kenyans. But guess what? As much as Honorable Dwell was out of order, the reasons why he said that we cannot run away from them. Kenyans need to step up and take more responsibility for the quality of leaders they're sending to Parliament. And Kenyans also need to start understanding what it means when you send somebody there and you'll have an issue with his salary, you'll have an issue with his placement, you'll have an issue with his jurisdiction. There needs to be a greater understanding. There needs to be a greater awareness as to what their role is, what we expect of them. So that, as I said before, just like what he said, we cannot sit here and hope that when Dewey goes to Parliament, when Yvonne goes to Parliament, and when Martin, we can expect that out of the goodness of our hearts, we shall do good by Kenyans. There should be something bigger than the goodness of your heart that goes into play there. So he was trying to say something, and I guess he was upset because he took it personal.
Right.
Like, he probably forgot he cannot speak for himself at that point.
Yes.
He took it very personal when he responded.
Yeah.
But I guess he's trying to tell Kenyans, but you have a responsibility towards this. We didn't fall from the moon. And it's not a military state. We were not appointed from DOD. We came from you. We came from amongst you. And part of the frustration is, it is true, we criticize at every corner as Kenyans. It reminds, the crab culture? The argument of the crabs?
Yeah.
Do you know the argument of the crabs?
The mob mentality?
The crabs that like staying in a hole together, and if you try and get out, they're always getting one leg on you and one arm on you.
Yeah.
We seem to be happy to stay in one hole as crabs. If anybody steps out, they're the enemy. You can't stand aside, you can't stand alone.
Well, I
What do
think
you think,
it's good you said that maybe he was upset at that particular point in time, which is human. You must also understand him, but we cannot excuse him for that. But I hope he has searched his soul and realized that
he just needs to temper his upset.
Like you said, it's not a promise, it's a hope.
He can't do that kind of thing in the house. But also on the flip side, this is like Louis said, it's a very serious position. He by essence, he is the leader of government business. Right. It's only the names we've changed and used majority.
Right.
He is the leader of government business in the house. So all matters to do with government, he is their representative. If anything goes wrong within government, he is unanswerable to the house.
Within the National
Absolutely.
Assembly. Right.
And he has a deputy who's called Dr. Naomi Shaban. They are the two of them. The two of them have to speak for this government. So in the event there is any issue, they will come up for it. So I think this is not a position he has held before. In my view, maybe he's learning on the job right now, and I hope with time he's going to perfect it.
Why is
but
it?
He has to juggle between handling 300 MPs who are asking him questions and want to know what is happening within government, what is going wrong within government. Maybe, I don't know. I was with journalists, my parliamentary colleagues the other day, just last week, and they feel the system whereby we used to have cabinet ministers come to answer questions on behalf of government. I think they find that a better position, as opposed to when you have everything, you load it over to one person.
Okay.
Then no. There was again.
You tend to give this person a major
But I will
task.
let me tell you.
But there was a plan, Martin. There was a plan when we adopted, and I'm not going to argue about whether it is right or wrong, but when we adopted the system of government, if you follow the initial rollout plan, it is just that we are not doing things correctly right now. The whole idea was not to load up on whoever the leader of majority is. That wasn't the plan. Other institutions need to kick in within Parliament. Other elements of the argument need to kick in. But right now, again, this lack of communication is now telling. even in that area. Because for me, the sum total of Honorable Duale's performance is not even about his response, his response to the question about salaries and question about being called thieves. I'm looking at him in regard to everything else he says. So when you look at the way he will argue in Parliament, he argues as if he's making political defenses for the president. It's not about that. We moved on from that. We need to hear him talking about structure that involves all Kenyans. He needs to separate his job to fight politically for the president and his job to deliver in Parliament for all Kenyans. Because now he cannot separate Kenyans.
Okay, here's the thing, though.
Then how do you separate issues of politics when they arise in the House? How do you expect him to deal with them? Because they definitely arise when the person of the president is mentioned and he is his representative there.
Allow me to also understand the issue of cabinet secretaries.
If they attack his president, by all means let him defend his president. But if they present to him matters regarding developmental issues, if they present to him matters regarding policy that affects every Kenyan, it's not the time to start defending or speaking for your president. Because we cannot then say, in fact, the effect of what you're saying is, he will just be there to defend the president. It's not his role.
It is one of his duties.
It is one of. Okay, let's talk about the fact that cabinet secretaries are still answerable to the National Assembly, and this is through the committees, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just saying,
I think
other elements have to kick in.
Duale has been having this rough time because we had not had a proper structure.
And it's only rough for him because he's also too excitable.
Of course, he has to get excited. He's been appointed to a serious position.
Get excited, but don't get too excitable. There's a difference.
No, here's the thing for me, and I think everybody needs to take this very seriously. When you move up a position in life, please do take the training and the time to be able to learn what is expected of me in my new position in life. Learning never stops.
Should we send her to talk to Duale?
No, really, I would be happy to give him classes. You are now the leader of majority. You now represent the Parliament, the president in Parliament. You need to look and act presidential. And yes, we're all human and we get annoyed and we get upset. But in a job like this, if I came today and I've had a bad morning and everybody gets to know that I've had a bad morning, who cares?
Well, you're clearly upset with Duale, right?
No, here we go. So please pass this message on to your very good friend. And we come in peace and we mean well. But I'd just like an update. And this is from Bonnie, who's our cameraman. We asked him to dial 999. And he's just tweeted at 7:14 and at 7:17, he dialed 999 twice. No response. He's still dialing and he'll still continue to give us the update in the course of this 1 hour. So let's just assume hypothetically that wherever Bonnie is, he's in a situation of distress. As were the residents of Teso in Akobwait, and they were calling 999 and nobody was picking this up. And it took Okoitio Mtata to actually call the Inspector General. And I keep saying, not everybody has Kimayo's number. And so not everybody can call. So Bonnie, carry on calling and do tell us. And whoever else wherever else you're watching us from as far back as Mandera, try and call and let us know if they pick up your call. So that was at 7:14 and 7:17. We're now coming close to 8 o'clock. So keep us updated and also carry on with that issue. All right, so we want to move on now. So oh my, TikTok.
I mean, we only just started.
I was wondering, you said 7:17 and if a person was in distress, it would have been
he's been hacked to death, which is what's happened in some of these cases. So we will continue with that. That I think will be our cause until the day we get a response from 999, until somebody says hello, and we'll do this every single day of the week, in solidarity with Okoitio Mtata. Let's speak about protests right now. The pigs and the blood and everything, and the pig and her piglets, which had names of certain people who felt offended that their names had been put on pigs. And I liked what people were saying on Twitter. All of you people saying, oh, pigs, and always the first to eat bacon and sausages and things like that. But, let's talk about the protest. And, Louis, when we were discussing this earlier, you had a different take, carrying it forward.
I'm very clear.
Yeah.
There was a protest.
Yeah.
Now, whatever happened was seen, and there's been a reaction to it. There are those who were happy, and there are those who were unhappy. But for me, it's done. We need to see something new. They have a continuous duty. They've taken it upon themselves that they will make it known when they're upset, and they'll step up there and make it known loudly. My position right now is, unless there's a new protest coming up, unless people are going to sit in for the TJRC report to be released, something like that. I'm bored now talking about this pigs and piglets and what. It's done. It happened. And people who were happy have stated it. And those who are unhappy have also stated it. But we cannot then sit there for the next 6 months because it was the last big spectacle from civil society. They need to step up a notch now. We need to see something else to talk about so that we can see. I'm interested in seeing us level out in terms of how we will stage our protests. We need to level out in terms of how we will stage our sit-ins, how we'll make our voices be known, because that is where we are heading.
So
we're heading to a space
it's
where
about it being sustainable.
No,
so
it's about
while what they did.
It's about Kenya
last
finding
week
a level,
Okay.
because now we are allowed to do this. It is clear, it's constitutional. You're allowed to protest, but we need to find our level. How do we do this? So, because in other developed countries, there's a level. They know how to do the protest, and you'll find it is a consistent complaint. It's a consistent voice they use. It's a consistent modality they have. But we're not yet there. That's why this one is still such a big spectacle. We can't move on from it because we haven't reached our level in terms of how do we display our upset with this government.
Do you think the pigs were mistreated?
Yvonne? Seriously?
Yes. And I'm saying this with a straight
Maybe
face.
the KSPSA will be able to say that.
But they already said they're upset.
No, but I'm not asking you this in your capacity as an expert on animal care or animal matters.
That I'm not an expert in.
Well understood. Hopefully.
No,
it's coming to you, Luke, by the way.
I'm not doing those
I mean, really, because we talked about the fact that the animals were not in their natural environment. What is the natural environment of a pig? Yes.
Well, the issue is, okay, I think what we need to understand is that I would speak in terms of how we need to conduct our protests and demonstrations, because I also know if you obstruct a member of parliament from going for business, it's also illegal, it's unlawful, it's criminal. You cannot, even a member of parliament on his way to parliament cannot be arrested because of a civil matter or stuff like that, because he is going to legislate. So that's also criminal. So you can't do that. So even when protests are being carried out, civil society must also know the manner in which they are protesting. I wish we could move from away from these issues whereby we want to whichever MPs want to meet, we want to we want to fight them. You can protest and make your point without obstructing the other person from doing their work. That is possible, and the message will still go home. So we need people, when we are protesting, we also need to understand those facts. But be that as it may, civil society have a duty and have a right to be able to do their job in terms of raising awareness, raising the red flag in terms of when things go wrong. Because if we stifle civil society, then this society is doomed.
Every time we talk about civil society, and this is some of the issues, and someone on Twitter, Gitonga, says civil society needs to disclose who sponsors their actions, and there's always the talk about them being sponsored by outside forces. Well, of course it is obvious to many that their sponsorship comes from outside. Transparency International, for example, is not a Kenyan company. But let's talk about that. Why? Yes,
there are Kenyans who are working on Transparency International.
Yes,
so we should not move whether they are sponsored by donors or not. That's not the point. The point is, if there is a wrong that has been committed, are we standing up to say no to that wrong? Are we, because if we move to the issue of starting looking for who is funding what and what, we will lose track, because we need to, when there's a matter that is itching Kenyans, that is a matter that is wrong, people must stand up for the truth and say no to something that is wrong. And everybody must be given space to say whatever they want to say. But like we said, you must also do it within the confines of, to ensure that you don't also stifle the rights of the other person. That is the way to go.
Do we know everybody who supports this government financially? Do we know where the government collects any aid that it gets? Do we know? If we know, do we agree with it? This is a capitalist country. And so you cannot then start wasting time trying to find out who's funding these guys. What is the law against that? What they're trying to do now, which is okay, is to find out if there's anything adverse, if there's anything untoward, if there's something subversive, there is a law government can use to deal with that. But to have a conversation where every time we're asking who is funding them, is to totally miss the point.
But then, you know, also what I didn't understand is that everybody was in agreement with the protest and saying, yes, they're speaking for us, the general public, and we don't want to pay the members of parliament. And then again, we are the same people that come up and say, oh, but wait, who's funding them? So at some point we agree with the fact that there's a group of people that have the courage and the guts to actually go out into the street and protest. For the rest of us who are sitting pretty watching it on television and saying, oh Martin, my, how gory it was. But we're still the same people that go back and say, okay, I don't have a problem with knowing who funds them. You know, if they want to be transparent, and that's fine. But does it sometimes seem like what we were saying in the beginning,
Martin,
we just love to oppose?
You have a history for this, where it came from. You remember? Money has been poured. That is where we picked up this very tired cliches. So that if anything goes different to what you wanted, money has been poured. And we picked it up, and now the modern way of saying it is funding. Somebody's funding them. If they're getting money in a way that is not dangerous, if they're getting money from people who are not illegitimate in terms of who we recognize within our constitution and our laws of this country, that is not the agenda to discuss. What we need